The great council hall of the Galactic Federation stretched across 3 kilometers of polished stone. Representatives from 47 species sat in their assigned sections, their various forms creating a rainbow of alien biology. At the center podium stood David Miller, a human engineer from Earth's outer colonies. His proposal lay displayed on the massive holographic projector above. The alien delegates stared at the simple diagram with barely hidden amusement. The reptilian chancellor, Lord Vex, leaned back in his throne-like seat, his scaled lips curling into what humans might call a sneer. Let me understand this correctly. Vex's voice boomed through the translation devices. You wish to propose that we abandon our current energy systems that have powered our civilizations for thousands of years, and replace them with this? David nodded firmly. Yes, sir. The fusion cascade system I've developed can produce energy output levels that are impossible, interrupted General Quarks of the warrior mantis species. His 4 arms gestured dismissively at the hologram. Our scientists have already reached the theoretical limits of energy production. What you suggest violates the fundamental laws of physics as we know them. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The blue-skinned Aquarians whispered among themselves with their melodic voices. The gas-dwelling nebula folk bobbed. In their containment suits, their tentacles waving in what David had learned was their version of laughter. Ambassador Toole of the ancient stone people spoke next, his voice grinding like mountains moving. Human, your species has been part of this federation for merely 50 years. We have studied energy production for millennia. Do not presume to teach us what we have already mastered. David felt the weight of their stares. Every species in the hall looked down on humans as the newcomers, the primitive mammals who had barely figured out faster-than-light travel. Earth's colonies were small, weak, and dependent on alien technology for survival. I understand your concerns, David said, his voice steady despite the pressure. But I've run the calculations thousands of times. If we can create a controlled cascade reaction using quantum field manipulation, Dr. Zeal of the machine-like cyber race interrupted. Her metallic voice carried a tone of superiority. Human, we abandoned such primitive theories centuries ago. Your understanding of energy dynamics is laughably basic. The hall erupted in what could only be described as alien laughter. The mantis clicked their mandibles, the Aquarians sang high-pitched notes, and the stone people rumbled like avalanches. Even the usually silent shadow beings flickered with what David assumed was amusement. Chancellor Vex raised one clawed hand. For silence. I admire your enthusiasm, Human Miller. But the Federation cannot waste resources on impossible dreams. Your proposal is denied. David stood there for a moment, holding the datapad containing 5 years of his life's work. 5 years of calculations, experiments, and sleepless nights. 5 years of believing he could help humanity find its place among the stars. What if I could prove it works? He asked quietly. The laughter died down. Vex tilted his reptilian head. Excuse me? Give me 6 months, David said, his voice growing stronger. Let me build a small prototype. If it fails, I'll never bring it up again. But if it succeeds, when it fails, corrected General Quarks, will you agree to end this foolishness and focus on more suitable work for your species? David met the general's compound eyes without flinching. When it succeeds, will this council admit that perhaps humans have something valuable to contribute to the galaxy? The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't mocking or dismissive. It was the kind of quiet that comes before. A stormed out Chancellor Vex exchanged glances with the other senior delegates. Finally, he spoke. Very well, Human Miller. You have your 6 months. But understand this. When your experiment fails, it will serve as proof of humanity's proper role. in this galaxy is as laborers and miners, not as scientists or innovators. The vote was unanimous. 47 species agreed to let the foolish human waste 6 months on an impossible dream. As David gathered his materials and left the council hall, he could hear the conversations resuming behind him. They spoke of other matters now, having dismissed him and his idea completely. But David Miller had something they didn't expect. He had been working on this project not for 5 years, but for 15. The prototype wasn't theoretical anymore. It was already built, hidden in an abandoned mining station on the edge of human spacedot as his shuttle departed the Federation capital. David looked back at the massive city ship one last time. In 6 months, he would return. And when he did, everything would change. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. Asterisk, the mining station on asteroid belt 7 had been abandoned for 3 years. Its corridors were dark, filled with the recycled air that tasted of metal and old fear. This was where David Miller had chosen to conduct his real work, far from the prying censors of the Federation. His assistant, Jack Roberts, met him at the airlock. Jack was one of only 12 humans who knew what David was really doing out here. The others were scattered across human space, each working on different components of the project. "How did it go?" Jack asked as they walked through the empty corridors. David's laugh was bitter. "About as expected. They think we're children playing with toys we don't understand. Are we?" David stopped walking and turned to face his friend. "Jack, I've seen the energy readings from our prototype. We're not playing with toys. We're playing with forces that could reshape the balance of power in this galaxy." They reached the station's main laboratory, hidden behind layers of security that would make Federation spies weep. Inside, the prototype hummed quietly. It was smaller than David had expected when he first designed it, only about the size of a large refrigerator. But the energy readings on the monitors told a different story. "Show me yesterday's test results," David said. Jack pulled up the holographic displays. Numbers cascaded through the air, showing power output levels, stability measurements, and efficiency ratings. David studied them with the intensity of a man whose life's work hung in the balance. "It's working better than we hoped," Jack said, quietly. "The cascade effect is holding stable for longer periods. We're getting power outputs that are ... He paused, seeming to search for words. "Impossible?" David suggested. "I was going to say terrifying." David understood his concern. The prototype was producing energy levels that were theoretically impossible according to current galactic science. If the Federation's best minds were right, what they had built shouldn't exist. But it did exist, and it was working. "Have you told the others?" David asked. Tom and Lisa know. They're working on scaling up the design for full-size reactors. But David ... Jack's voice carried a note of worry. "What happens when the Federation finds out we've been lying to them?" David had been asking himself the same question for months. The human colonies existed at the mercy of the Federation. Earth's population was growing, but they were still outnumbered by every major species by factors of thousands. If the Federation decided humanity was a threat, they won't find out. David said finally, "Not until we're ready. And when will that be?" David looked at the prototype, its gentle hum filling the silence between them. "When we have enough of these reactors to power every human colony. When we have ships fast enough to outrun their fleets and weapons powerful enough to defend ourselves." Jack stared at him. "You're talking about war. I'm talking about freedom." David turned back to the displays, studying the cascade patterns. "Right now, we mine asteroids for the Federation. We grow food for the Federation. We build ships for the Federation. And in return, they let us exist in the corners of space they don't want." The truth hung between them like a live wire. Humanity had joined the Federation not as equals, but as a client species. They were useful for dangerous jobs that other species preferred not to do. Mining in radioactive asteroid fields, exploring dangerous nebulae, fighting in the occasional border conflicts with species outside Federation space. The reactor design isn't just about energy, David continued. It's about choice. With unlimited clean energy, we can terraform worlds the Federation considers worthless. We can build cities in space. We can become self-sufficient. And then we stop asking permission. Jack was quiet for a long moment, watching the numbers flow across the displays. The other colonies, do they know what this is really about? David nodded slowly. The colony leaders know. They've been preparing. New Singapore is building a shipyard in secret. New Montana is training pilots. New Sydney is working on weapon systems. All powered by your reactors. All powered by unlimited energy. David smiled for the first time since returning from the Federation capital. They laughed at my idea, Jack. They dismissed it without even looking at the real data. They think humans are too primitive to understand true science. Jack looked at the prototype again, its quiet operation belying the revolutionary forces contained within. When do we tell them they were wrong? David's smile grew wider, though it didn't reach his eyes. In 5 months and 3 weeks, when I return to the Federation Council, I'm going to show them exactly how wrong they were. Outside the station, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that everything was about to change. 5 months and 3 weeks after his humiliating dismissal, David Miller stood once again in the great council hall of the Galactic Federation. But this time, he was not alone. Behind him stood 12 other humans, each carrying datapads and portable holographic projectors. They wore the simple gray uniforms of Earth's merchant marine, but their eyes held a confidence that had been absent during David's last visit. The assembled delegates seemed puzzled by the human delegation's return. Most had forgotten about David's impossible energy project entirely. Chancellor Vex looked down from his throne with mild irritation. Human Miller. Vex's voice carried the same dismissive tone as before. I trust you have come to admit the failure of your experiment and accept your species' proper role in the galaxy? David stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. Actually, Chancellor, I've come to show you the results. The holographic projectors activated simultaneously, filling the air above the delegates with displays of technical data, energy output readings, and video footage that made several alien representatives gasp audibly. The first display showed David's prototype reactor in operation, its energy output clearly visible on multiple measurement devices. The numbers were staggering. Power levels had exceeded the theoretical maximums by factors of 10. As you can see, David continued, the fusion cascade system works exactly as predicted. But that was just the beginning. The second display activated, showing footage from new Singapore shipyards. Massive vessels under construction, their hulls gleaming with new armor plating and weapon systems. Ships that dwarfed anything in humanity's previous fleet. General Corks of the mantis species rose from his seat, his forearms gesturing frantically. This is impossible. The energy requirements for building ships of that size would bankrupt your entire species. Would have bankrupted us, David corrected, using Federation energy systems. But with unlimited clean power, construction costs become irrelevant. The third display showed star maps marking 17 new star systems, complete with detailed surveys of habitable worlds and resource deposits. The locations were far beyond the current borders of Federation space. Ambassador Toole of the Stone People spoke, his voice like grinding granite. You have been conducting unauthorized exploration beyond Federation borders. This violates multiple treaties. Treaties that bind Federation members, replied one of David's companions, Administrator Wong from New Singapore. but were no longer Federation members. The silence that followed was absolute. 47 species of advanced aliens stared. At the small group of humans in complete shock, Chancellor Vex was the first to find his voice. You cannot simply leave the Federation. Your species lacks the infrastructure, the technology, the resources. Actually, we have all of those things now, David interrupted. The infrastructure is built. The technology works. And as for resources, the displays shifted to show massive mining operations in the 17 new systems, extracting materials at rates that would have been impossible with conventional power sources. Dr. Zeal of the cyber race stood abruptly, her metallic form vibrating with what might have been rage. This is preposterous. You cannot have developed this technology in secret. Our surveillance systems would have detected any large-scale construction projects. Your surveillance systems monitor Federation space, Wang replied calmly. We built everything outside your jurisdiction. The implications hit the delegates like a wave. Humanity had not only developed revolutionary technology, they had used it to build an entire civilization beyond Federation control. They had ships, colonies, weapons, and most importantly, they had independence. General Corks's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the tactical situation. How many ships do you have? David smiled. Enough. That is not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting, General. But I will tell you this. Every human colony, every mining station, every ship in our fleet is now powered by Cascade reactors. We don't need your fuel, your supplies, or your protection anymore. Chancellor Vex's reptilian eyes narrowed as he studied the displays. What do you want, Miller? Territory? Resources? Trading rights? We want what every species wants, David replied. The right to determine our own destiny. The right to explore, to grow, to build civilizations according to our own values and dreams. And if we refuse to recognize your independence, David's expression hardened, then you'll discover exactly how effective our new technology is in combat situations. The threat hung in the air like smoke. For the first time in the Federation's history, a member species was not asking for permission to leave. They were announcing their departure and daring anyone to try to stop them. The galaxy had laughed at one human's idea. Now they were about to learn that sometimes the best revenge is simply proving everyone wrong. 1 year later, the galaxy looked very different. The human colonies that had once existed on the margins of Federation space were now the bustling centers of an independent civilization. Ships bearing the new Earth Alliance flag moved freely between 17 star systems, carrying trade goods, colonists, and the technology that had made it all possible. David Miller stood on the observation deck of the Alliance flagship Independence, watching his construction crews put the finishing touches on humanity's first major space station in the new territories. The station was massive, larger than anything the Federation had built in the outer sectors, powered by fusion cascade reactors that would keep it running for centuries. Captain Elena Rodriguez joined him at the viewing port, carrying a data pad with the latest reports from across human space. The migration numbers keep growing, she said. Another 50,000 colonists arrived this week from Earth and the old territories. Any problems with Federation interference? David asked. Elena shook her head. They're keeping their distance. Ever since the Battle of Junction Point, they seem to have accepted that we're not going back. The Battle of Junction Point had been the only major military engagement between the Alliance and the Federation. When a Federation task force had attempted to blockade human shipping lanes, they encountered a squadron of Alliance warships powered by Cascade reactors. The battle lasted exactly 43 minutes. No Alliance ships were lost. The Federation fleet had retreated, and since then, Official contacts between the two powers had been limited to trade negotiations and border agreements. "What's the word from Earth?" David asked. "Prime Minister Chon sends her congratulations on the station's completion. She also wanted me to remind you about next month's technology sharing conference." David nodded. That conference represented something unprecedented in galactic history. For the first time, humans were sharing their advanced technology with other species, not as subordinates seeking approval, but as equals offering partnership. 3 smaller species had already approached the Alliance about adopting cascade reactor technology. The benthic people, who lived on ocean worlds the Federation, considered worthless, could use unlimited energy to power massive underwater cities. The crystal beings, whose silicon-based biology made them excellent engineers, were interested in joint development projects. Even some individual members of Federation species had quietly inquired about immigration to Alliance space. "Dr. Miller," came a voice from behind them. They turned to see Commander Torres, the station's chief of operations. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Federation capital." "It's Chancellor Vex himself." David and Elena exchanged glances. Official. Communications between the Alliance and the Federation were rare and usually handled through diplomatic channels. "Put him through to Conference Room 1, David said. The holographic projector activated, showing Chancellor Vex's reptilian form in full detail. The Galactic Federation's leader looked older than David remembered, and there was something in his expression that might have been respect. "Dr. Miller," Vex began, his tone carefully neutral, "I am transmitting from the Federation Council chambers. I wanted to personally inform you that the Council has voted to officially recognize the Earth Alliance as an independent stellar nation." David kept his expression neutral, though he felt a surge of satisfaction. "That's welcome news, Chancellor. We look forward to peaceful relations between our peoples." "There is another matter," Vex continued. "Several Federation member species have requested access to your cascade reactor technology. They are prepared to offer considerable compensation." "We've already begun sharing the technology with our allies," David replied. "Species that value independence and cooperation over domination and control." Vex's eyes narrowed slightly, but he continued, "The Council would also like to discuss potential collaboration on exploration projects. Your recent discoveries in the Outer Rim have been ... impressive." David smiled. "Chancellor, when I first proposed cascade technology to your council, I was told that humans were too primitive to understand true science, that our role in the galaxy was as laborers and miners, not as scientists or innovators." "Circumstances have changed," Vex said stiffly. "Yes, they have, but not because we changed, because you finally realized what we were capable of when given the chance to prove ourselves." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, covering trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and joint research projects. When it ended, David found himself thinking about how far humanity had come. A year ago, they had been subjects, dependent on Federation technology, and confined to the margins of civilized space. Now they were partners, exploring new worlds and sharing their discoveries with species that valued cooperation over conquest. As David watched ships from 6 different species dock at the new station, he realized that his simple fusion reactor had done more than revolutionize energy production. It had given humanity something far more valuable than unlimited power. It had given them unlimited possibilities. The galaxy had laughed at one human's idea. Now it burned with the light of human innovation, and nothing would ever be the same.